Hi.
Thank you, Lois. Hi, I'm Johnine. I'm dumb and dumber. That's kind of what it sounds like in my head when I say I'm an addict alcoholic. It just seems repetitive. So what happens is each room that I go into, I was really good at being a chameleon out there, and when I'm in a Cocaine Anonymous meeting, I address myself as an addict. And my clean date is November 12th, 2003. I have a home group. It's normally tonight on Thursday nights. And I attend regularly, and I attend the business meetings. I have a sponsor who sponsors. I have sponsees. And within sponsorship, I've learned what the 12 steps of the Big Book and 12 traditions of the Big Book, and then there's 12 concepts even. Who knew? And so the 12 steps, they happen to, crazy, but they happen to save my life. I mean, back in 1930-something, there were these two guys, and what they did is they talked to each other. And in the time that they were talking, they happened not to use. Like some sort of odd miracle happened. They ended up writing a book, and some of the language doesn't compute in my brain. So I need a sponsor to help define that. So I have a sponsor that helps me go through the book and read it and understand, and then laid out the 12 steps. Started with one, and I worked through them in sequence. And she told me if I ever felt like I was stuck on a step, to go back to the last step, because there was something that I was missing. And that's proven to be really helpful. I come from a family of a long line of dysfunction, and my father was an alcoholic who I didn't see misuse pain substances. And my mom, she was a codependent, and her drug of choice is worry. And she gave birth to two beautiful girls, Donna and Kathy, a workaholic and a foodaholic. And then 20 years later, she gave birth to me. Just a full-blown addict, addicted to now and more. And when I was a little girl, there was so much dysfunction going on in my home that, looking back, doing the work, getting curious, I found out that even before I used people, places, or things as my solution, the reason why was I had a desperate feeling of abandonment and rejection. A feeling that I wasn't worthy. I wasn't worthy of anything, really. Anything nice. Anything lovable. I didn't understand who I was. And apparently, my parents didn't know how to teach me. I remember being in, well, it doesn't matter what school, you might not understand. So I was about 3 or 4 years old, And it was my first schooling adventure, and I was excited and terrified all at the same time. And we were playing this game, us little kids. We were sitting around in a circle on the floor, and there was one child that walked around the outside of the circle and would pat each child on the head, and each pat they would say, duck, 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 goose. And I was so incredibly terrified. I didn't know whether I wanted to be the duck or the goose. I mean, listen, if I was the duck, that meant that no one cared about me enough to make me the goose. And if I was the goose, what if I stood up too fast and I fell over? Everyone would laugh at me. I suffer from way too much thinking. I don't really like to talk about specific solutions before I found recovery, because when I'm sitting in the room listening, I can get triggered. I have 13 years and I still get triggered. And so what I know is I connect best with emotions and feelings, fear and desperation, maybe even joy. That's sort of foreign. I'm learning about joy. So when I entered primary school and into high school, those years, I didn't go to school much because I was afraid of kids. I was always afraid of you because I knew that you had the rule book. You had life's rule book, and somehow you knew what I didn't know. And you were going to laugh at me. And I'm judging you for judging me. But you weren't even judging me. You didn't even care about me. You're in your own world, come to find out. I stopped myself from living life a long time ago because I was so afraid. Thousands and thousands and thousands of forms of fear. And when the unage appropriate, I was going to say age appropriate, but none of the things that I did were age appropriate as a kid. Those solutions, they seem to work, kind of like what they talk about the 9-step promises. But the 9-step promises, when you're working a program of CA with a sponsor, the 9-step promises, they manifest and they stick around. And with my solutions before recovery, I felt better for a minute or two, but then shame and remorse and fear creep back in. My story is a lot like yours and nothing like yours. It's the same and different. And it doesn't really matter what it is. If you're interested in my story, it's in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous on page 279. It's just one page. I didn't write it, but that's my story. And so at the end, when the bottom came up to hit me, I was so afraid that I might have killed someone or a whole family and left a small infant to fend for itself. The shame and guilt of that thought and the deep internal knowing that my physical body, the organs, were shutting down. I knew that was happening. And the truth that I had used up all of my friends, all of my family, I just kept taking from them. And I didn't know how to give back. I was just so desperate to fill this void, this circle of darkness within my soul. that I just kept taking things from people and places and things. And one night, I made the decision to call someone who was a good listener. I didn't really understand why he would leave if we were hanging out for some reason. I didn't understand why he would leave and go to this meeting thing, but he would leave me, go to these meetings. I didn't understand why he was even in my life. I do now. So I knew he was getting home from work at 12 noon the next day, and I couldn't wait to call him. And when I called him, I just threw up all over the phone with verbs and nouns and explicitives and words, so many words. And all he said was, "Are you hungry?" I'm like, "Are you not listening to me? My life is falling apart. What? And so finally, I said, "No, but I'll go have pizza with you." And so we sat. I don't know what happened in that pizza lunch moment, but he said, "I'm going to a meeting tonight. Do you want to come with me?" And I said, "Yeah," because I had nowhere else to go. I had no one else that wanted me to be a part of their lives. I didn't want to be a part of my life. So I went to a meeting, and for the first time in my life, I admitted I was powerless. And I looked at you, I looked at the people in the rooms, in that room in particular, and I thought, I would have used with all of y'all. Maybe, in different bars or in different cubby holes or under different bridges, but I would have totally used with you because I was a user. I used people, places, and things. And within my first week, I kept going to meetings because that's what you told me. You gave me a book and told me to go to meetings. And so I went to meetings, and I found God. I found the gift of desperation. I was ready. And in those meetings, I found God. If I was in an AA meeting, I found a group of drunks for sure. And something happened within the meetings. For some reason, I didn't want to use. And for some reason, even though I couldn't sit still in my seat, I was okay for a minute. I didn't understand it. So I kept going back to meetings. I went to women's meetings. I was asked to get a sponsor, and so I looked across the room when in a women's meeting, I looked across the room at all these women over there that held their hands up saying they were willing to sponsor. And so I went and asked one after the meeting, and she said, "Did you see the woman sitting right next to you that drove you to the meeting?" She had her hand up. "Why don't you go ask her?" It's like, oh, they have it all wrong. But I did. I asked her, and she said yes. And she got me right into step work. And she said, "I want you to use a pen and I want you to use paper. I don't want you to erase anything. You can scribble. I don't care what it looks like. I'm not going to read it. You're going to read it. So if you can't read it, rewrite it so you can read it. Otherwise, I'm never going to look at your step work. You are." And that's where it started. I was with her for 8 months. And what I realized was in the detox process, I didn't know how to sleep. I didn't know how to eat. I didn't know how to take a bath. And her work schedule was completely different than mine. And so I couldn't call her. I couldn't say help. I don't know what to do. And so what I did in the meetings is I got phone lists. I got people's phone numbers, and I called them. I called them late at night. I called them early in the morning. I called them midday. I called them whenever I could. And I remember I said, how do you take a bath? Like, I was so afraid of getting in the bath and being too hot and then being too cold. Like, I didn't know how to regulate my own body temperature. And also nothing made sense. I hadn't done anything without a substance in my body for so many years that I didn't know how to live life on life's terms. I had her for 8 months, and then I realized she was unavailable, and I was getting nervous. I was getting scared that I had a sponsor that I couldn't get a hold of. And I was watching this other woman in the room, and I said, she scares me. She totally scares me. But she also knows the book really quite well. She has all these scribbles in the book and highlights and page dog-eared, and it just made sense. I didn't understand what was pushing me or pulling me towards her, but I told her my story with my other sponsor, and she says, well, if it's not working for you, you are learning how to be a grown-up. If growing up was easy, we would have done it a long time ago. So you're learning how to be a grown-up. Maybe you can ask for your needs to get met. And if she can't do that, I'm able to sponsor you. And we took off. So in that moment, I had 2 sponsors until I told the other one. And I didn't want to tell her because I have worry syndrome and people-pleasing issues. I'm like, oh, I don't want to hurt her feelings. Oh, my God. So I talked to my new sponsor about that. She said, if she wants anything other than for your health, she's not the sponsor for you anyway. So it was great. I started out with this new sponsor, and I called her. She asked me to call her every day for 30 days in a row. And when I called her, I had to reveal 3 miracles in my day. And so I started out with really big ones, like, world issues. And she said, did you wake up clean today? Did you wake up today? Did you have a toothbrush today? Just make it really easy. Did you witness someone who was in the room that had a miracle of their own and you felt touched by it? Miracles are all over the place. And I realized before entering recovery, I didn't see any of them. I was so self-obsessed. My problem is really quite well described on page 62 of the big book. It's all about me. And now it's the strangest thing in recovery. It's still it starts with me. What's important for me is to stay clean. Because if I'm not clean, I'm no help to me or anyone else. And along the way, I defined my ununderstanding, my misunderstanding of God. It started out with gift of desperation in a group of drunks, good orderly direction, grace over drama, a doorknob. I said the word God in my first year of recovery more than I said the word God in my entire life. And now I say it because it's 3 letters and it's quick and I'm lazy. So I just God, whatever. What this program has given me through working the steps and showing up to meetings and having a sponsor, having sponsees, is I get to learn how to be a friend. So if I'm a friend, that means I have to put myself out there. I have to be vulnerable and ask, hey, do you want to have coffee? Do you want to be a part of my life? I would have never done that, because what I knew about me, and honestly, once in a while, what the addict still wants me to believe, is that my insides, which I judge by your outsides, my insides are full of maggots, rotting flesh, worms, and bile. It's just not a good thing. So why would you want to be a part of my life? So I never let anyone see who I used to be. And now, to be vulnerable enough to say, my name's Johnine, and I'm an addict, and I would really like to have coffee with you, is one of the bravest things that I can do. I get to be a family member. I get to either show up in their lives or call them, even if they don't want to be a part of mine. I get to send them cards. I get to be a worker among workers. I don't have to be the boss. I don't have to know everything. I know some stuff, but I don't know everything. I hope I never do. And that's why I keep coming back to these rooms, is because sitting here listening to you helps remind me, my conscious contact throughout the day is normally not starting out with God praying on my knees. The only time I really pray on my knees is right before I chair a meeting. Terrified, totally terrified. And so I with the 10-step promises, it talks about the intuitive thoughts and being conscious. And so I'm really conscious of my body, what it's telling me: hungry, angry, lonely, tired, serious. I get quiet, and I'm conscious of my intuitive thoughts. And they're quiet. My intuitive thoughts are quiet. Those God thoughts are quiet. And they're always, always, always felt with love. My thoughts are much louder, and they want to get away with everything. They're deceitful. And so when I don't know what to do in the middle of my day, I do the dishes. Because I might not know what the next right thing is, and there's probably a dish to do. And I can ask for help today. I don't have to know everything. What I do know is I'm really honored and grateful to be in this room with you, to be in a room of like-minded individuals. It's a privilege. Thank you for my recovery.
Thanks, Johnine.
Thank you, Johnine. The format of the meeting is